Right, we're live then. So, yeah, welcome to one of the first events like this we've had at NetNZ. We're lucky to have Ian Harding from Datacom here to give us an insight into the IT industry. Datacom have been working in partnership with NetNZ to deliver a computing and programming course, which has been invaluable this year. And this is a chance really to get some enthusiasm out there and some insight into the IT industry, especially within Datacom, what that might look like. So, we are just going to have, Ian's going to introduce himself and then launch into his presentation. Feel free to send questions through the Q&A, those who are watching the broadcast. And those of you who are here, what we'll do is just wait till the end for you to ask some questions. So do think of some questions at the end as you're going through, because I'm sure Ian would like to have some interaction and talk about a few things. Okay, so write some questions down as you go and we'll do it right at the end. Has anyone got any questions at all? Right, go for it, Ian.
Cool. Well, I'm Ian Harding. I run the software development team in Datacom in South Island. We're a relatively small team, about 20 or so people. The net result of the output of our team is a range of generically Microsoft-based products. We focus on mobility and industrial mobility. It's an exciting field. We've been doing it for, as long as I've been with Datacom, which is a significant number of years, a lot longer than most of you have been playing around with smartphones and the like. When we've worked with NetNZ in regards to the software development course that many of you are probably involved with, or you're doing your own courses directly at school, what I noticed with interest is in talking to the students and hearing from the students, there are some of you who are particularly good at writing code, but there are others of you who are struggling with that. Now, what it highlighted to me and to Rachel, who's our recruitment person here, is in fact IT is far, far bigger than just writing software. So whilst you may find that writing software is tricky, in fact there's a whole lot of other fields you can be involved with within IT. And so what Trevor and Darren and I discussed was to put together a presentation to give you a rough idea of where the various other things that occur within the IT industry actually happen. So I'll just flip across to the presentation and I'll slowly go through it and describe each particular role. Oops. So, where does software fit in? Hopefully you can see this. It's a banner which says IT solves problems. I'll assume that you can all see that. A little catchphrase there. At Datacom, we believe that cleverly applied information technology can make a demonstrable difference to our clients' businesses in a world of high expectation and limited resources. What are we actually saying here? Datacom is a business who supplies IT to businesses. So let's just move through some of the roles that we get involved with. And first of all, we'll start off as the software developer. Now, for us, a software developer is the person who's creating the applications that are going to be used by a business. They're really writing the software. A lot of you will know a little bit about that because as part of your courses, you'll actually be using languages, creating software, and generating some kind of output. If we look at this page here, you'll see on the bottom left-hand corner the rough salary ranges for a graduate to a senior developer. And on the top right-hand corner, you'll see a percentage which will tell you the approximate numbers within Datacom of software developers across the whole of the IT sphere. So in this case, about 10% of Datacom's employees are software developers, which gives you a good idea of how much software development is involved in the whole of the IT business. Ultimately, when you guys have done a course and put something together, you've probably written some software and then you've needed to test it. Now, out of that, we have specialist testers who actually sit down and write test cases based upon the system that the people are actually overall trying to create. So a test manager will sit down, build a test case up. Each test case will test every single piece of the software based on the specification, come out with a pass or fail. They'll look at a range of other things, including usability, strange things that people do, everything that's really weird around software and the effects of one system against another. I would expect that you, in writing your schoolwork up, would in fact be doing your own testing before you submit it through to your teacher for marking. Let's have a look at another end though, and that is somewhere along the line someone has actually written a specification of what's required, and that is the business analyst. Now, broadly speaking, in regards to your schoolwork, your business analysis, in other words, working out what you need to do and how you're going to go about it and what the output of what you're being generating is going to be, will probably be undertaken by your teacher when they define the requirements for each assessment. In the business world, we need someone who's going to sit down, understand what the business needs from their outputs, create a specification of what's required, and then pass that off to the developers to develop and the testers to test. Overall, though, there's a whole lot of other stuff that comes into it. Graphics design. How is the user interface actually going to work? We call that UX, or user experience. That's the whole relationship between buttons, actions, flow, everything associated with the key elements of creating a good piece of software that will actually work intuitively. The better the role of the graphics designer and user experience person in creating what's required, and the better looking, the easier the software is to use. We need someone who's going to tie all this together, because so far we've probably got about, in a team, maybe 4 or 5 software developers. We've probably got a business analyst. We've probably got a graphic artist. We've probably got 1 or 2 test people involved in it. So ultimately, you need someone who's going to tie it all together and make sure everything happens in the right times. And the project manager is the key person involved. This particular project manager in IT actually needs quite a bit of domain knowledge. Now, domain knowledge, we mean, is a broad understanding of the process of writing software, getting it implemented in the right way, and getting all the things lined up so everybody can be working efficiently. If we bind all those things together, you'll quickly see that there's a whole lot of links that occur between the various people, the various individuals in the teams, and the person, the final business, the customer, the investor, whoever it is, to actually create the final result. But somewhere along the line, there must have been an account manager who managed to find the customer and what they needed to do. So the account manager, for want of a better term, is the salesman. They're the ones who are going to find the customer, work out what's actually needed, and then hand the next step off to the business analyst and the project managers to start building what they need. But so far, we've just written software. We're not actually running it anywhere yet. So the next thing we need to deal with is, how do we actually get that software into an environment where the customer can use it? And the service delivery manager slots in here to make sure that systems are available for customers when they need it. They look after the complete running of the system and the relationship that occurs between Datacom and the customer. Now, when I say one system, it may in fact be a massive system. It could be a system of a couple of hundred servers, and we have customers out there who run 300 servers. So that service delivery manager needs to keep abreast of everything that's going on. To put 300 servers together, or even just one, and actually make everything work properly, you need an architect. Now, generally our architects are highly skilled people. They've been in the business for a long time. They've understood multiple areas of systems, and most importantly, they understand how to stitch them all together to make them all go. There's a lot of technology behind this. There's a lot of working out what connects to what, and there's an awful lot of sitting down and trying to work out why some things won't actually go. It's a very big role. Ultimately, it's one who really sets in place whether or not a system is going to work or not for a customer in the broadest sense of the term. Once the architect has designed something, you're going to need some people who are going to stage it up. They need to put together the servers, they need to maintain those servers, they need to make sure that those systems are all in place and ready to run so that business can actually keep ticking over. The server administrator will also take responsibility for making sure that those servers are running at the best they possibly can. They spend a lot of time tuning, making sure that the servers are all patched, that ultimately everything is in place so that that system keeps running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And if you've got a few hundred of these servers, you can make sure that they are also looking after the automatic processes that are looking after those systems. Of course, you can't actually use a computer unless you've got a network to connect to it. So you guys might be working at school, at distance or wherever. You're probably naturally thinking, yep, I'll connect to my Wi-Fi, or I'll plug into a socket on the wall and I'll just be able to connect to the internet or anything. Well, none of that happens without a network management person making sure that all those pipes are connected up and managed. There's huge levels of complexity in putting together a public and a private network, whether it's an internet, a wide area network, a local area network, a WWAN, which is a wireless wide area network. Everything's complicated, everything needs to work, and at the end of the day, when you guys, as people who want to use it, just want to connect, you just want it to be there. Ultimately, for a network engineer, their best job has occurred when no one notices they've actually done anything. There's a lot of skills required for that. You can see the value of the people. A highly respected network management engineer can demand quite a high level of income simply because of the complexity that's being put in place. If we go to the other end of the spectrum, there are many situations in a business world where people need help. Now, help is a very broad sense of the term. We run a service desk here. It's not a help desk, it's a service desk which focuses on what we call first call resolution. In other words, you ring in, you have a problem, someone will help you work through it, fix it, and make sure you go away happy. So there's a lot of knowledge is needed on general user functionality to do that. Service desk operator is a great way of getting involved in the IT industry to actually start your process of working through IT management, where you may end up as a server manager, or you may end up by going through in the network stream, or you may end up by moving into sales. It's a really, really good starting point to give you a basis of understanding what people do wrong. You need really, really good problem-solving skills for that. If we actually look at all those particular elements, which broadly we call IT management, you'll suddenly see that there's a massive connection between people, that everybody is connecting with everybody else to make sure that the whole systems are actually all working in tandem together and functioning really, really well. But at this particular point, we still don't even have any equipment. Now, we need some servers to be installed somewhere, and they need to be running in a data center that's a properly maintained environment that's going to look after the heating and the cooling and the power requirements for all the servers and systems you've got out in the world. Nothing just happens by sitting in the back corner. These pieces of equipment, if you're running a business on it, you're not going to have it sitting in a cubby hole in the corner. You're going to have it really well looked after, and you want to make sure that no matter what happens, it's going to run. The data center operator is looking after that. They're racking and de-racking equipment in the private cloud. They may even be doing the same kind of thing for public cloud, making sure that all servers and power supplies are in good nick and that everything is ticking along. This too is a really good entry-level position for you to get good understandings on how systems work if you really like playing with brand new hardware. But to get that hardware, we need someone who's going to find it and buy it and get it delivered in the right place. So procurement specialists are people who are actually looking at everything that could be involved with IT. Now that could be from mice and keyboards to PCs to even IP-based phones to big servers, big engines, networking requirements. Ultimately, these people are stitching together the contracts and the licensing for software so that all systems can run as expected. Of course, once you get stuff out in the field, you're probably going to need someone who's going to help the equipment when it's out there. Maybe that's to move it around in a big organisation. People move around desks quite often. Equipment needs to be moved. Even big things like moving stuff from one data centre to another requires someone who's going to actually go out and do it. So for those people who actually like popping the lids on equipment and having a look at what's inside it, field service engineer is a really, really great opportunity. I think it's the A+ qualification. There's a good basic understanding of how PCs and systems work. But ultimately what we're finding is the field service engineer is turning into the help desk person in the field. They're actually solving people's problems right then and there, sitting right next to them at their desks. So really, really good quality customer service skills are needed there. So if you like meeting with people and working with people and helping them and getting a big thank you every time you solve a problem, then that's really the perfect role for you. We stitch all those particular items together and suddenly we find that the consulting architect's talking to the procurement person to get the right equipment, who's getting it then set up in the network environment, getting installed into the data center and then maintained, set up, run. Everything's associated with what's actually going on with the actual equipment. Now we're in a situation where we have some software that's been written by people, some servers that have been set up and ready to go, and they've all been installed into the data center and everything's ready to happen. Now we need to get the software that's been written installed and running on those servers. So the release operations engineer is actually working out what releases need to go together, how things are actually going to coexist, because some systems don't actually coexist with others, so they have to work out what is going to work and what isn't going to work, and then test it and validate it and make sure that that's all ready to just flip into production. Now that's not a one-off process. That process continually occurs because software constantly changes. Software developers will come up with a new thing because the businesses have come up with a new requirement. Maybe servers need to be replaced and the like. So all of these will flow through the release operations engineer to make sure everything is actually working to the proper level and will actually coexist quite happily. We've got some other specialist tasks as well. The database administrator looks after data warehouses and databases. For businesses, a database is the key to the world. That is where all their information is held, whether it's in a well-known SQL relational database or whether it goes off into big data environments where basically anything you do in the business is tracked and stored and then analysed in different ways. So that database administrator makes sure systems are running properly and are singing at a database level and at the data warehouse level. Now, enterprise service bus consultants, probably none of you have ever heard of this, but ultimately when you have many, many different systems that all need to connect together, the service bus is what actually does it. It might connect your freight system to your transport system, which may connect you out to your external web to provide information to customers, which may actually connect back to your financials so you can bill customers, which may then connect through to your payroll system so you can pay your employees or your contractors. So the service bus is what binds all these together. We don't write software to connect them all together. We use a system that interconnects with standards, and the service bus consultant works out what's required, builds it, and makes sure that it runs. Business intelligence, that's kind of the new future actually. That's all about once a business has captured all this data, is sitting down and working out what they can do with it. So those of you who really enjoy mathematics and statistics in year 13, this can be a really good opportunity for you to sit down and go, I can craft up some really exciting information which interprets the data that the businesses hold. So some things that we might have in business intelligence is that if we do really, really clever things, we can connect in with the networking. So let's say you're walking through a shopping mall and you happen to have your phone turned on. We put a whole lot of access points, or the network people put a whole lot of access points in that mall, and they actually follow you as you are walking through the shops. Now, that actually gets a really good flow idea of how people are moving through the mall. But what's interesting as well is if you walk into a shop and then buy something, they can actually bind your phone to you, to the purchase you've just made. So ultimately, they can work out what kind of things you want to actually be involved with. Let's take that one step further then, and you go, great, now we know that you go, shall I be a bit, anyway, maybe you're into shopping for clothes. So as you wander through a particular mall, you happen to drop into all the clothes shops, maybe they can start working this out and go, oh, you just walked past another clothes shop, we'll just pop up a message on your phone to say, hey, there's a special if you want to walk in here right now for the next 10 minutes and buy something from us. So there's a lot of pervasive information that can come out of business intelligence. If we take all those things, and this is just only a few of the various areas in IT, and start to connect them all together, what you'll see broadly is that there's a whole lot of interaction between the original requirements that the business asked for, what the software developers created, the testers have validated, have worked, has been delivered onto servers and is maintained and ongoing, and then data is derived back out and delivered back into the business to tell them how they can do a better role. Everybody interconnects in IT. There's no single area, and you need to really understand how all those items can fit. And if you're looking for a career, in fact, you may start off by looking at software, but you may end up in a completely different area doing something entirely different. So what I'll do is I'll hand back over now, and we'll take any questions that anybody might have.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. I'll jump in here. I'll start off with a couple of questions that have been fed on to me, and that'll give the students here a bit of time. If you guys can just think about some questions you might have. They might be personal questions. You might be thinking about the IT industry and have something in particular you want to ask Ian, or it might be more general. And I know Trevor Storrs here, who teaches the computer and programming course with Datacom, and he's got might have some questions he can pass on from his students who had this presentation a wee while ago. But it was fairly interesting, Ian, just to note how many different pathways there are and different skill sets. But one question for you is in terms of Datacom. Do you look at is there a fundamental or any foundation skills that you look at for any Datacom employee as they come in? Is there anything in particular you look at that they need to have that's sort of a generic skill?
Unfortunately, Rachel can't be with us, who's our recruitment person, who'd be able to perfectly answer that question. I guess I can focus on my view of the world. What I'm looking for, from my point of view, is a person ultimately who's going to fit the team. I know that's a bizarre kind of statement, but some real proof that you can actually fit in with a team and work well with other people is a really, really good starting point. Yes, we definitely need some technical qualifications in regards to ability. University and polytechs provide those levels of qualifications along with tertiary institutions. So ultimately, if you have got some kind of skill that we can leverage and make use of from any of those areas, then that'll get you through to the shortlist. After that, it's actually going to end up in our environment in being how well you present yourselves. So you need to look good, you need to sound good, you need to be enthusiastic.
Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, we can't see you currently. If you're able to get your video going again.
Okay, to do that I'll have to drop out and come back into it. So just do you carry on chatting and I'll drop out.
Go for it. I'll have a talk to the students here while you do that. It's probably a good opportunity.
Cool.
Hey guys, while I was out, can you have a think about some questions? Have you got some? You know you do. I know Trevor can chime in as well. I've got one or two others that have been passed on to me, but have you guys got any questions you'd like to ask now? Go for it, Trevor.
Yeah, hi Ian. Well, given that the industry is sort of stereotypically dominated by men, what opportunities are there for women in ICT?
I think the answer to that is huge. If you actually look at those at the video and the pictures that I put in place there, I made a rather sexist and generic statement in regards to what particular gender people best suited for some of these roles. In regards to customer relationships, Some of the best people actually are women. So service delivery managers are dominated by women. Project management in that particular area is also dominated a little bit by women. But there are lots of other areas that are involved with women. Some of my best software developers are women. They think about things in a different way, and they come at and they approach what's going on in a better, far more actually better is the wrong word, but a far more broader viewpoint on what they're trying to achieve. That's not to say the men can't do it at all. You know, I've got to admit that probably 85% of my team are males, but 15% of the software developers are women. So there are lots of opportunities for the women to get involved and get through in IT in various areas.
Another question that was fed on to me was, this is a difficult one, Ian. I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer this or not, but you touched on it earlier when you talked about the future. But what is the future of the industry? Do you think any sort of things in particular that are trending, developing, that you think where it might go?
The reality of our industry is that I look at the qualifications that people have. You know, you go to university, you spend, or Polytech, or the tertiary educations, and you spend 2 to 3 years maybe getting yourself a diploma or a degree, and somewhat scaringly, in 3 years' time, that'll be useless to you. The industry changes so quickly that qualifications from 3 years ago are almost moot. So to be able to give you a forethought on where the industry is going to go is almost impossible. If we went back, say, 5 years, no one would have thought that most people would be doing stuff on their mobile phones. It just wasn't there. Whereas now the expectation is that most people are doing things on their phones. They're browsing for things they want to buy on the web. They're actually wandering through, as I mentioned, through malls, purchasing things. They're actually standing in customers' stores, and we know this from the stats we get. They might walk into one retailer and then look up the product at another retailer and go, oh, it's cheaper over there, I'll actually go straight over there and buy it further down the road. Now, businesses are responding to that, and this is the business intelligence side of it, and they're actually going, oh, we know that you're looking elsewhere, we'll send salesmen over and persuade you to stay with them. So it's not so much where is the industry going, it's more where is IT helping businesses do better business. So in the broad scheme of things, I couldn't tell you what's going to happen in 3 years' time. Systems are going to be smaller, they're going to be faster, they're going to be doing more, you know, battery life's going to last longer, all those bits and pieces. But hey, I couldn't actually tell you, but it's an exciting place to be, and it's a great place to be involved with because everything is always changing. If you are not willing to learn and keep learning, IT is not for you. If you love discovering new things and you love playing with new things and you love being involved in the constant change, IT is definitely the space.
Well, you answered a question in a way I was going to ask, but I mean, it is ever evolving, isn't it? And is there, I mean, we've got some students here, we have many more watching and who'll watch later. Apart from what you just said, is there any advice you give to them if they're thinking about getting into this industry? What do they need to be thinking about now? We've got some year 10s here, we've got some seniors as well. Any advice you'd give them?
Be passionate. If you're passionate about IT and you love what you're doing, then naturally that's going to be the best career choice you can ever have. I think also be very open-minded in the way in which, you know, you'll come out of school and you'll have some very specific skills which are really, really useful, but don't think that that's the be-all and end-all of IT, because there are many, many other places you can be involved with. So it's a case of being open and being enthusiastic to discover and enthusiastic to get involved.
Great, that's a great answer. I mean, with anything. So, Trevor, where you go?
Yeah, you touched on, which was great, about you've got to be able to keep learning because otherwise you'll quickly be out of date. So, what do companies like Datacom do to help their employees keep ahead of things?
We do a range of things. Within our company, we have an annual what we call data comp. It's a competition. You get all the software developers together. They all migrate to one place, and then they have 48 hours to build a product from scratch, and then they have to present it to what you'd loosely call a lion's den or a shark's tank kind of presentation to sell it. And then that's a competition which comes out. It's worth dosh, but the reality is it's the enthusiasm that gets driven out of it. We also have some what we call camps, where other groups of developers get together. They go to these camps. It's what we call a non-conference, in that no one knows what's going to be talked about until you get there. Everybody gets together and is very collegial and works out what they want to discover, and then someone will present on it. Now, those are two main things in the software area. The same thing kind of happens in the IT management space, ITM, where new systems will come along, so they'll run a process of trying it all out. What I do with my team here is that every couple of weeks, one of the team members will be given something new to discover, or they might have already discovered something. They'll spend a bit of time going through and putting it together, and then they'll present it to their peers. And in that way, new systems, new ideas, new concepts, new ways of doing things can be shared, discussed, and taken on board or dismissed if they don't actually fit what we're doing. So training and keeping up to speed is almost inherent. It's almost part of what you've got to do, because if you don't keep up to speed, you will get left behind, and once you're left behind, it's really, really hard to keep up. And we all know, just in the languages and systems and everything else that you're dealing with, even at school, things change really, really quickly, and there is always something new that's appeared, and you have to analyse whether it's going to do what you need it to do.
Thanks for that, Ian. I mean, if you don't mind, I mean, what's been your journey within the industry in terms of as an example? You want to tell us anything about that?
Mine was an interesting journey, to be honest. I managed to go to a privileged school, and whilst I was there, this is back in the 70s, they actually had a small mini computer available for us to work with. So I managed to get on board relatively young and discover what it was all about. So they didn't have an IT course when I was back there. They had something rather called Applied Mathematics. So I jumped on that course because I quite enjoyed it. Half of it was programming, and the other half was discovering statistics. Never could understand statistics. So that was the core, but all the way through it, you know, having the access to a computer from effectively year 9, actually allowed me to be involved in that. Now, from that, I actually got a job which was with television, interestingly enough. And I was the software developer for a program when it first started called What Now. I guess you guys probably have been watching it more of late, but I was on board when What Now first started, and that's 30-something years ago. So I see Darren nodding his head. He probably watched it as a kid too. So yeah, so that's where I started. I was doing software development for them for graphics. From there, I also managed to get a technical course. So ultimately, I have never actually gotten an IT-based qualification, technically. I've done a whole lot of training courses and the like, but I didn't go to university, and I didn't go to Polytech to discover those. I actually went through from a different angle. So where it's really important, and my story and my background is to say that it actually comes down to attitude, and it comes down to a desire to learn to allow you to go forward. Less so than sitting down and studying the thing left, right and centre. If you've got the aptitude, you can do it. Anybody can do it. It's actually not that hard. And then, yep, I got a job at Datacom 20-something years ago. So, yeah, here I am still now, and I've just quietly moved through the process of developer to business analyst to test, and now I'm the manager of the department, which means I'm the salesman.
That was interesting. Thanks. I mean, yes. What now? I remember Danny Watson many years ago. Might have been around that time. But anyway, so I suppose as I heard one of the boys earlier talking about, you know, computing being a big passion of theirs and tinkering and all the rest of it. I suppose if you're just really, yes, I know, really interested in, and it really takes your fancy, I think you just got to follow those things, and that's the message Ian's giving there. I mean, any questions? Have you got anything else, Trevor?
Yeah, just one question, which is, these are actually some of the questions that our students asked earlier on in the year. But one that quite a few people were interested in is, what sort of opportunities are there for overseas work?
I couldn't actually comment on what kind of opportunities there are overseas. I don't try and train up people to send them overseas. I want to keep them here. So there's definitely opportunities. There's the international side of things. I know that there's opportunities that come and go in Australia. What's interesting is that in Datacom New Zealand we provide all the software services, not all of them, but most of the software services to our Datacom Australia organisation, simply because it's actually cheaper in New Zealand than in Australia. You know, at the end of the day, picking an IT career at the moment is not going to be a bad decision. It's always going to be the right place to go. Opportunities will appear based on your ability to communicate and your ability to take on board and execute. So it really, as I say, it comes down to yourself. I do remember another question actually, Trevor, from the list, and that was, which was the best way to go in regards to tertiary education, whether you should go to university or Polytech? And I'll give you my opinion on this. And broadly speaking, if you're excited about the concept about learning how and thinking how to do IT, then university is a really good space. If you actually get a real excitement from creating stuff and actually coding, then the Polytechs and the tertiary institutions are a better choice to go to. So those environments which require really, really good academic thinking, things like business intelligence is the first one that pops to mind. University is going to be the best place to go because you can get a really, really good grounding in statistics and mathematics. If we are just looking for software developers who can cut really high quality code and they spend a lot of time cutting code, then in fact the Polytech is a better choice. Because that's what they spend most of their time doing, understanding how to create good quality code.
So I'll mute myself, Ian. I just got a question through from Linda. It's asking how many people do you employ each year? Not sure if that's new each year or whether it's total each year. I mean, what are the numbers?
Well, Datacom in New Zealand is around about 2,700 people. It's the biggest IT company in New Zealand. Across all areas, we see approximately a 10% growth each year. The Australian group is growing faster, simply because they started a lot later. So they're growing there about probably 1,800. They'll be hitting 2,000 soon. So they're growing relatively quickly. Now, in relation to how many are new and how many are experienced, well, you always get people leaving a business simply because they're retiring or they have an opportunity to go somewhere else. So if we've got a 10% growth year on year, we're probably recruiting at about 15% a year. Now, we'll recruit into skilled levels, of course, everybody does, but at the graduate level, we also recruit in. For me, it's around about, I would probably bring in, because I'm a small team, maybe 1 to 2 graduates a year based on the model. Of late, unfortunately, I'm bringing in a lot of seniors because I needed a lot of skill just to get things up and running, but I don't need any more seniors at the moment, so I'm looking for graduates in the next couple of years, just to fatten the team out from that and get us a little more balanced. Wellington, Auckland software development teams, I think they're about 300 people each. Yep, they will be bringing in approximately 20 to 30 people a year just into those two businesses. And that's just software development. That's the key thing. You know, if we go into service desk and the IT management and server management and areas like that, you've got a similar amount of growth on the number of people. So the service desk in Christchurch is, I think, about 20 people. Many people start out in service desk and move on. So I have 2 of my team members have come out of the service desk. They've gone through service desk, they've then gone back and retrained as software developers. Actually, one of them is a graphic artist, brought their skills across, and now they're part of the software development team. But they started out in service desk, looking after customers, understanding what customers do. I should also note that if I do take in a graduate straight into the software development team, after a year, they will actually go to the service desk and spend time on the service desk to understand what customers do wrong, because users generally make the same mistakes over and over again. And if a software developer understands what those mistakes are before they start writing code, they'll write better code. And the net result is we want to make sure that the number of issues that go to the service desk is reduced, because it's actually quite expensive to look after people. So if a software developer can provide really good information to a user at the time they make a mistake, and check that and also check what the mistake is, then the users can help themselves. Users are happier, service desk's happier, everyone's happier.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a few people watching, so feel free to pass any more questions on before we finish up. Good opportunity to actually ask Ian some questions directly. I mean, before Ian, I was just going to ask something related to what you're saying before. You're talking about the industry in New Zealand and keeping people in the industry in New Zealand. How much opportunity is there within New Zealand? What's the state of the IT industry within New Zealand? Is it fairly vibrant, healthy? What would you say about it?
I think it's vibrant and healthy. The very fact that I find it very hard to find good quality software developers, I think, represents that. I think that when we're recruiting in entry level for service desk and things like that, there's a lot of people apply. I know that there's a good hearty market out there, so you need to ensure that responding to those advertisements, you are really and truly putting your best foot forward in IT, because you need to get higher in the pile. But once you get to the other end of it, once you actually get on board, you need to be enthusiastic to be part of the whole process. So I think that the IT industry will continue to grow. It's a way in which businesses can improve themselves, even if we go out to the various games manufacturers and the like, and I know there's a couple of them in Christchurch. The way in which they're putting stuff together is really important, because now they're creating games for businesses. So it's not games for people to go and relax. They're actually got an ulterior motive. So if a business can have a game to get people involved in their business, they'll go ahead and try it, bring them on board. And you see those kind of systems in a variety of ways. I think there's an advertisement for an insurance company at the moment, is they're not talking about the quality of driving. Now, who would have thought that the quality of driving and, using your mobile phone to monitor your driving would end up being a really good way of getting people to buy insurance from that insurance company. But that's the kind of stuff that games manufacturers will put together. Now, I use the term very, very generically. What it means is a non-business focused outcome insofar as enterprise systems.
Okay. Any last questions? Oh, you've got a question. We can't hear you, unfortunately. Now, that's a pity. You could try putting it through the chat. The microphone might not be on the laptop you're using. So there's group chat on the. Justin knows this in the far top left corner. You could send the message, send it through there if you wanted. Well, there's the Q&A. Give you a moment.
Trevor, were there any other questions from the list that the NetNZ team? There was quite some really good questions in all of that we can follow through on.
I think most of them have been covered, but there's a couple of ones around sort of what's it actually like to work and so on. So I'll roll them together into one, and I'm sure you'll answer them. So we've got questions like, is it rewarding? Is it enjoyable working in the IT industry? There's the question on, do you get a choice on whether to take a project on or not?
Okay, so there's two things in that one. Is it enjoyable? My answer to that would be, as I touched on earlier, if you're not actually going to enjoy your job, you should find another job. So you've got to be excited about what's important to you in making sure that you get a job that you love. And the other question related to it's gone straight out of my mind, that was, can you choose the projects you work on? Generally, no. Your employer chooses the projects you're going to be working on. But if you work for yourself and you're self-employed, then you can choose your project. So there's a question there. What would be the minimum requirements for each job subject-wise? At the bottom, if you actually go back and look at the video and look at the bottom portion of each of the little key things, you'll see the key tenets which are required that people are looking for in those particular areas. What are the subject requirements? Oh, sorry, subject requirements. Ultimately, an understanding of IT. Ultimately, really good means of communicating. So a good written word and a good spoken word, because that's going to be important to communicate with other people. And ultimately, a basic understanding, probably in the mathematics realm for business. Very strong understanding of mathematics if you're going to be making games, because that's all about movement and X, Y, Z and various other bits and pieces. If you are talking about business analysis, again, it's, sorry, not business analysis, business intelligence, you're talking about good maths and statistics. Basically, if you're in the what they loosely call the STEM field, which is science and technology, you'll have the right basis for the right subjects to get you on board. Though, you know, I'm thinking of people like our graphic artists and the like, and our user experience people, they are coming in from a complete arts background, but most of them actually have an interest in technology in any case. So it's a little bit more than just a paper-based graphics write-up. There's a whole lot of technology they need to understand in HTML and CSS to put together the concepts they want to have in place. So technological understanding will still set them in straight.
Awesome. Any other questions? That was a good one. Okay. Well, otherwise, we're coming to an end, that means, and I'll... Oh no, someone's just about to feed one through, are you? Just put it through the chat if you want to.
What would be the average pay? The average pay, if you go back to the video and watch on the underneath each little icon of people, you'll see the range of pays. So it really comes down to the majority of pay is dependent on the amount of time you have in the industry. That's probably the easiest way to look at it. You're not going to come straight out of school and get a consultant's job. It just ain't going to happen. So you need to get the time under your belt so you understand the broad range of things. I think what's really exciting about the IT industry is you come out of school going, wow, I've learned a whole lot. Then you'll hit the industry and actually discover what you don't know. And that's your opportunity to sit down and learn about everything else you didn't get an opportunity to learn at school and what you didn't get an opportunity to learn at the polytechs and the tertiary institutions. So average pay, starting pay for a service desk operator will be just above the average New Zealand income, about $40,000 a year. And then you'll disappear all the way up to those people who are ultimately responsible for running the business, which will be, you know, $150,000 a year plus. So there's a big range of pay. Senior developers probably sitting around, it's constantly changing, probably $100,000 or more. Service delivery manager will be around about the same level. Ultimately, right at the moment, out of curiosity, more than anything, you'll get paid more in Christchurch than you will in Auckland because there's too many people in Auckland. So yeah, it's harder to get people in Christchurch. So it's like any market, you know, the amount of income is dependent on the available resource to fill it.
I'll wrap things up and just thank Ian for coming today and actually enlightening. That was very interesting. It's interesting for me. My wife works in the IT industry, but so I'm familiar with some of those things, but it gives you a real insight. And so hopefully you guys who are here and those who've been watching gained a lot. And the video itself will be put onto YouTube, so you're free to, and published widely, free to watch it whenever you want. And go back through, especially if you want to have a look at some of those slides Ian was taking you through in terms of the different jobs and career pathways. You might want to go back.